The White House says President Joe Biden has spoken to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the phone, and Netanyahu has again reiterated that Israel will not institute a ceasefire.
Well, there will be no ceasefire, general ceasefire in Gaza without the release of our hostages. As far as tactical little pauses, an hour here, an hour there, we've had them before. I suppose we'll check the circumstances in order to enable goods, humanitarian goods to come in, or our hostages, individual hostages to leave. But I don't think there's going to be a general ceasefire.
We're going to speak to Sara Khairat. She's joining us from occupied East Jerusalem. Sara, what more do we know about this conversation?
Yeah, well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this for a while, that there wouldn't be a full ceasefire at any point throughout this war. And this was the conversation that he had also with the US President Joe Biden overnight in a phone call that was made, where the White House said they discussed this potential pause, tactical pause, they've called it, where it would only be for a small amount of time, a small window that would not only allow people from the north that we've been seeing move to the south, but also to allow more humanitarian aid in. The US has said many times that it supports Israel not having a full ceasefire, but it's pushing for these temporary pauses to allow more humanitarian aid in, for example. However, the caveat here is that Israel, even in that interview, had said, this interview was with ABC News in Australia, where he did say that maybe an hour here or an hour there, but the condition is that there would be full release of all of those being held captive. So it sounds like, from what he's saying, is that the only time they would consider this is that the captives would all be freed, and it would only be during that period of freeing them that there would be a pause. Israel has maintained that their concern is that, and this is the same with the US, that if there was a longer ceasefire, let's say a day or two, that this would give Hamas time to regroup and get together and implement a plan to fight the Israeli forces. They already say they have a strong momentum as they move further into Gaza City, and that they want to continue to maintain that.
Sara Khairat talking to us from occupied East Jerusalem. Sara, thank you very much. We're going to talk to Rob Reynolds now. He's in Washington, D.C. We're going to get the U.S. angle on this. Rob, in that conversation, that interview, rather, I understand that Benjamin Netanyahu has suggested that Israel may take on the control of Gaza, quote, indefinitely. That seems to be going against what the US and Joe Biden has been saying pretty much from day one. They were suggesting that Israel should not be involved with it. Just talk us through what's going on there.
Well, the two sides are definitely not on, the two countries are definitely not on the same page here, Rob, with Netanyahu implying some kind of indefinite takeover of the security of Gaza, and a different or heightened form of occupation of Gaza, with the White House at the same time emphasizing that it's important that the Palestinian people in Gaza not be forced out or forcibly displaced from that territory. In the call earlier today between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, Biden did mention the idea of this tactical pause, as Sara was mentioning. Later on, as Netanyahu spoke to American media, he said that it's possible that there could be short pauses, an hour here, an hour there, he said in his words, but definitely ruled out any kind of a ceasefire. So while the president has not come down on the side of a ceasefire, he is receiving a lot of pressure from the left wing of his party and from other nations, allies, to come out more forcefully to ask or demand from Netanyahu that some sort of ceasefire be put in place. But you see here in this instance, even though the United States is the main donor of weapons and money to Israel, with $3.8 billion per year of grant aid and a huge package of aid moving through the Congress now, and the weapons being supplied that the president just doesn't have as much leverage as one might think he would have over Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government.
And in terms of leverage, let's talk about U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Of course, he's been on a diplomatic tour of the Gulf regions, talking to leaders of Arab countries, but hasn't really returned with anything tangible as far as I can see.
Well, I guess it depends upon what you envision as what his goals were, what Secretary Blinken's goals were. I think the primary goal there was to send a message to Iran that the United States and the Arab nations in the region will not countenance a widening of the war, opening up of new fronts in the war. So it was really a warning to Iran, coupled, of course, with the addition of a U.S. nuclear submarine being brought into the area, which was a pointed sort of military signal to Iran as well. So if by coming home with nothing you mean he didn't get any tangible results from his meetings, for example, in Turkey about new commitments or anything of like that, that is true. But below the surface, as Blinken himself said, just because nothing is visible doesn't mean that something isn't happening or that some progress isn't being made.
Rob, thanks very much. Rob Reynolds talking to us from Washington, D.C.